Hi, I'm John Green, and this is Crash Course World History. Today we'll be focusing on Latin American culture and arts. Latin American culture and arts during the contemporary period were characterized by many various factors. New political ideologies, independent movements, nationalism, continuous European influence, and the rise of new art styles. Surrealism. Latin America encompasses most parts of South and Central America.
Mr. Green! Mr. Green! Mr. Green! Okay, so if it's called Latin America, why don't they all speak Latin?
Former me from the past, before my facial reconstruction, you are so naive. The term Latin America was actually coined by Napoleon III during his conquest to Mexico.
So you mean, he's related to, Napoleon Dynamite, right?
Me from the past, your stupidity never fails to amaze me. The events that transpired and continue to pass in Latin America's modern day period have continued to shape and grow into the culture we know today. There was a growing use of frescoes in Latin American art styles during the Italian Renaissance. In Brazil, a document called the Cannibalists Manifesto exhibited anti-colonism, Brazilian modernism, nationalism, and tribal primitivism. To cannibalize, in their words, meant to incorporate other countries into their nation and to reappropriate them into an entirely new form of society. Abstract expressions, also known as informalism, recalled Zen techniques and marked the beginning of surrealism taking root in Latin America. For our first point, European influence on Latin American culture. European culture greatly influenced Latin America through its various European colonial endeavors and merchant adventures. Spanish is the language in the majority of these countries. Portuguese also is spoken primarily in Brazil. French is also spoken in some areas. These languages were all originally European and were adapted into Latin American society. Several nations, especially in the Caribbean, have their own Creole languages, derived from European languages and various African tongues. Native American languages are also spoken in some areas. For example, Nahuatl is an indigenous language still spoken by over 1 million people in Mexico today. Interpretation of Christianity, especially from the perspective of the impoverished, various Afro-Latin American traditions such as Santeria and Macumba, a tribal voodoo religion, are also practiced. The primary religion throughout Latin America is Christianity, most of which is Roman Catholicism, which had its roots in Eastern Europe. Latin America, and in particular Brazil, are active in developing the Roman Catholic movement down as liberation theology. Towards the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, a distinctive Creole literary tradition emerged, including the first novels such as Lizardi's novel El Periquillo.
Periquillo Sarmiento.
I don't speak Spanish. And from these novels, vibrant, varied contemporary literature were able to evolve. Literature was also influenced by movements and modernismo.
Modernismo?
Excuse me? Modernismo. Music also observed influences from the Anglo-Saxon world, and particularly African music. In Brazil, samba, American jazz, European classical music, and choro combined into bossa nova.
Go.
The influence of European feminist movements also spread throughout the globe and affected Latin America in particular. European feminist waves, once they reached Latin America quickly, ignited some fiercey Latin American... I said fiercey, it's fiery. Can we just start that quickly? Ignited some fiery Latin American feminist movements and led thousands of women to realize inequality against them and to rally fights for their rights. Second, nation building in Latin America. There was an emergence of avant-garde and intellectual individuals. This was through an art movement called Indigenismo through 1900 and 1940. Indigenistas helped reconstruct culture, as there was construction of the dominant culture, the elite mestizos. They helped change culture through a series of novels, paintings, and their power in the government. In Brazil, the document Cannibalist Manifesto helped exhibit anti-colonialism. Now it's time for the open letter. But first, let's check the secret compartment. An open letter to world history textbook writers everywhere. Frida Kahlo was equally, if not more important to history than Diego Rivera. You undermine yourselves by choosing not to include her. She was an iconic and revolutionary artist. Sincerely, John Green. Next, the emergence of Latin American art styles. During mural Renaissance times, advocacy for political change from 1910 through 1920 was during the Mexican Revolution. An emergence of Surrealism exposed Picasso's origins of nationality. In the 20th and 21st centuries, there was an emergence of Modernismo with artists inspired directly by Impressionism. In relation to populist art and mural Renaissance, Diego Rivera admired the art forms of frescoes. With government support, artists were chosen to paint undecorated walls. Diego Rivera painted schools with inspiration from the Sistine Chapel. Orozco was angrier than Rivera. Subsequent politics were to observe community among all people. Rejected Europe. David Alfaro C. Queiroz was a communist. He embraced new industrial technologies and was made unwelcome in Mexico because he was a communist. Forms of art emerged like Mannerism, Realism, Baroque, and Rococo art. Independence movements in Latin America led to the separation of church and state. This had later led to the emergence of neoclassicism. This can later be seen in the works of Francisco de Goya. Frida Kahlo exhibited surrealism. As Frida Kahlo had once said, "I never painted dreams or nightmares. I painted my own reality." The emergence of surrealism was very important. And now let's go to the thought bubble.
The development and interaction of cultures was exhibited between European and Latin American nations, as European culture was adapted by Latin American artists. Many artistic styles from Europe, such as Surrealism, Cubism, and Romanticism, were exhibited in iconic Latin American artworks.
And last, changes in social classes and its influence on culture. If only I could light up. I'm gonna ask my dad if he has some batteries. This new concept of equality was known as equidad, and it favored the common good over individual gain. As social structures changed from the formerly rigid hierarchy, the various classes began to intermix. There was a lack of formal class division. The main thing that separated people from each other was property ownership. New economic changes that favored in the middle and lower classes resulted in greater political participation. Voting rates increased dramatically. As the population increased, a new working class emerged that had increased purchasing power. Companies rushed to attract this growing market by making products that appealed to the new growing family size. Women had also began working outside of their homes, even though they were paid less than men. This gave them an increased sense of liberation. This newfound sense of liberation would lead to the beginning of feminism and the women's rights movements in Latin America. Ecuador in 1929 later became the first Latin American nation to give women the right to vote.